Hello and welcome to Wrestling Trope Alert, the channel where we analyze professional wrestling. If this is your first time here, help the channel by clicking the subscribe button. Today we are going back to August 2001, and we are going to talk about the continuing rivalry between Diamond Dallas Page and The Undertaker ahead of the SummerSlam 2001 pay-per-view. This video is part 3 of a 3-part series of videos comprising the entire DDP vs The Undertaker rivalry. Links to the other parts are in the description. After DDP's stalking of The Undertaker's wife Sarah and the inaugural brawl at the Invasion pay-per-view, the evolving rivalry between The Undertaker and DDP would now take the form of a tag team rivalry. Undertaker would be reunited with his brother Kane, back into the powerful and dominant tag team, the Brothers of Destruction. And on the other side of this rivalry, DDP would be joined by his real-life friend Chris Kanyon in a sort of continuation of both men's previous days as tag team champions in the now defunct promotion WCW. Sadly, Chris Kanyon passed away in 2010 at the young age of 40 years old. At the Invasion pay-per-view, DDP and The Undertaker were last seen exiting through the audience. No explanation is given as to what happened to either man.
Life sucks, and then you die!
And at the following Raw, DDP is backstage with his friend Chris Kanyon, and from this point on, Chris Kanyon would be heavily featured. DDP is explaining the huge gaping plot hole of him kidnapping Deborah and then Steve Austin chasing them away the week prior.
I just had to drive the car. It was so easy. That was all Steve and Deborah. They came up with the whole thing.
Kanyon is attempting to get his gimmick over and does his best to sell his Invasion MVP shirt by claiming that he single-handedly won his 6-man tag team match the night before.
I pretty much single-handedly won that match.
John Stasiak from behind, Hugh Morris into the cover.
I was the MVP and I went out, I got this cool shirt made.
He calls this maneuver the alley-oop.
Besides, who's better than Kanyon?
This segment serves the purpose of laying the foundations for the next pay-per-view, which is SummerSlam later on the 19th of August 2001. The pairing of Kanyon and DDP will wrestle the Brothers of Destruction in a steel cage, and the 4 men will wrestle for tag team supremacy over the WCW and WWE Tag Team Championship. 5 minutes later, the Alliance leadership is now in the locker room patting themselves on the back, and the Wild Kanyon appears claiming to be the Invasion MVP. Stone Cold Steve Austin questions Kanyon about the phrase on the back of his shirt.
What's it say on the...
Then Kanyon attempts to explain himself to Austin, and because Kanyon is a former WCW wrestler and WWE wrestlers are constantly booked to hit all over WCW wrestlers, Austin buries Kanyon's gimmick.
I'll tell you who better than Chris Kanyon. Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Kanyon is then forced to retract his catchphrase.
Do you understand that?
Absolutely. Now what I'll say, who better than Kanyon besides Stone Cold Steve Austin?
And Stephanie sends Kanyon away because Kanyon has a match with Chris Jericho, and that match will happen 20 minutes later. Chris Jericho makes his entrance and cuts a promo on Kanyon with the help of the audience.
What's your name, man?
Kevin.
Kevin better than Kanyon?
Gary.
I think Gary better than Kanyon?
Then Jericho gets cut off, and here comes Kanyon and the violence ensues. During this match, Jericho would get choked by Kanyon's MVP shirt, and after a hard-fought match, Jericho would make Kanyon tap to the walls of Jericho. On the other side of this rivalry, The Undertaker is going to wrestle 25-year-old Rhino. Undertaker comes out with his wife Sarah and Rhino follows. Undertaker would pull out his arsenal of classic moves against Rhino, and then DDP would make his entrance as the Undertaker is preparing to chokeslam poor Rhino. Rhino joins Taz in being the only two men so far to lose by pinfall on free TV in this saga, and then the Undertaker notices that DDP is stalking his wife. Classic DDP. Undertaker leaves the ring in spectacular fashion and proceeds to punish the future CEO of DDP Yoga in the middle of the paying audience. Then DDP gets driven back to the ring and Sarah proceeds to kick the crap out of DDP, while the Undertaker goes for a share. Undertaker gets in the ring, drops his share to restrain his wife, but the hate for DDP is too strong to stop, and the Undertaker has to work hard to contain his lovely bride, and eventually Undertaker takes over and punishes DDP with some stiff right hands. DDP then flails all over the ring and attempts to grab the Undertaker's drop share from earlier. Undertaker manages to stop DDP, and as DDP crawls towards Sarah, Undertaker swings the chair, but the dastardly DDP pulls Sarah in front of the chair, causing the Undertaker to hit his beloved wife.
What? Oh no!
Undertaker carries his wife backstage and DDP flees the scene of the crime. Minutes later, Coach catches up with DDP, who regrets that Sarah got hurt, but then he delivers this line, causing the paying audience to giggle.
Oh my God, to see the anguish in her eyes, I mean, the pain, it really turned me on. I mean, it really turned me on. Oh my God.
On the following Smackdown, Chris Kanyon would be heavily featured. The Alliance is in the ring gloating about their growing collection of champions. Stephanie McMahon shrieks her way through her announcing duties, and Booker T, who is a double champion ever since the last episode of WCW Nitro early in March, is forced to relinquish one of his titles. And the man to receive the United States title from Booker T is Chris Kanyon. And sadly, this is the only singles title that Chris Kanyon would ever win in his almost 20-year career. I have two problems with this. First, this is a wrestling trope alert moment. The WWE is notorious for making someone champion seemingly out of the blue in the build-up of a pay-per-view. And further into the story, the Brothers of Destruction would win the WCW Tag Team Championship with no build-up. And the same would happen with Kanyon and DDP, who despite being a new tag team, would take the titles from an established tag team, the APA, with no build or story whatsoever. But more on that later. The WWE is only trying to make Kanyon a bigger obstacle for their WWE Golden Boy The Undertaker to defeat. And all this because the WWE was probably trying to test Booker T, hoping to see how Booker would react to losing both his titles. Because later in the broadcast, Booker also loses the WCW title to Kurt Angle, but that's a story for another day. But focusing on Kanyon, and further evidence of the disregard for both the story and the characters is that right after SummerSlam, Kanyon would lose a non-title match against Angle, then Kanyon would almost disappear from TV, only to resurface to lose to Tajiri in an open invitation match with also no build-up or story. And after that, sadly Kanyon would be relegated to third-string programming like Heat, Velocity, etc. Which leads us to the second problem with simply handling the title to Kanyon in this way. Kanyon receiving the title in 5 seconds, buried in the middle of a 20-minute Alliance segment, doesn't do anyone any favors. If they really wanted to give the title to Kanyon without a match, they should have milked that moment for what it's worth. For example, the WWE could have done a version of the finger poke of doom. Stephanie could come out flanked by her brother Shane and the greasy one Paul Heyman. Kanyon and Booker would then be announced by Stephanie, who always gets some heat, and then NWO referee Nick Patrick could officiate the match. Booker would lay down, Kanyon would cover him for the pinfall surrounded by the Alliance leadership, and the heat would be tremendous. But that doesn't happen because logic.
5 minutes later.
Kanyon would be in a backstage segment with Commissioner William Regal and Tajiri, in a questionable product of his time kind of segment that would probably never air today, because in this segment Tajiri and Regal make fun of Kanyon's speech impediment.
Before I grant you your match, you've got to perform a little test. You've got to say, she sells seashells by the seashore 10 times.
She sells by the shisha. She sells by the...
Cringe.
Kanyon wants a rematch from Jericho, but refuses to put his new title on the line. Regal grants Kanyon a tag team match between the team of Jericho and the always available Tajiri against Kanyon and a partner of his choosing, and Kanyon chooses Rob Van Dam. This filler match would end with RVD flying through the air and pinning Tajiri, keeping the status quo firmly in place. On the other half of this rivalry, The Undertaker is nowhere to be seen, presumably riding quad bikes at his luscious estate. Undertaker's brother, however, has a match with DDP, which is kinda funny because WWE managed to book a singles match between Kane and DDP, but the match that the people wanted to see, a singles match between The Undertaker and DDP, is still missing in action, and spoiler alert, it would actually never happen.
Life sucks, and then you die.
DDP makes his entrance showered in boos from the people. Then Kane follows with his incredible aura and mystique. Both men trade blows, and Kane is fueled by brotherly revenge due to DDP's actions against his kayfabe sister-in-law Sarah. DDP would bump and feed for the Big Red Machine, and DDP, despite being at this point 45 years old, moves better than half the roster. And then the match would end in disqualification because nobody ever wins or loses on free TV. Kane would be disqualified by the crooked referee Nick NWO Patrick. Kane would not be satisfied by the result. As Kane confronts NWO referee Nick Patrick, the dastardly DDP hits Kane with the chair. But Kane says f that and doesn't sell chair shots. Kane immediately props up to the dismay of DDP, and DDP runs away from Kane. And as usual, a chokeslam is necessary to give the paying audience their money's worth. So the dirty referee Nick Patrick gets chokeslammed by the Big Red Machine, followed by a ring explosion. On the following Raw broadcast, The Rock is coming back to the WWE because he was filming The Scorpion King, and this episode of Raw would revolve heavily on the theme of who will The Rock choose to align with, the Disgusting Alliance or the good old WWE. In the parking lot, the leaders of the warring factions are casually waiting for The Rock to arrive.
Cringe.
And the wild Chris Kanyon would appear instead.
Hey, you thought it was gonna be The Rock. You thought it was gonna be The Rock.
And later in the broadcast, Chris Kanyon would win a match with Lance Storm against the team of Edge and Christian. Side note, The Rock's allegiance would be revealed in the closing moments of the broadcast, and The Rock would deliver his finishing move, the Rock Bottom, to both the Alliance leaders and Vince McMahon. But then The Rock would cut a short promo revealing that he would be aligned with the WWE. Also in this theme episode of Raw, The Undertaker returns from riding quad bikes, and Undertaker along with his brother Kane, the Brothers of Destruction, are wrestling the Dudleys in a tag team ladder match. This would be an effort by the WWE to reposition once again the Brothers of Destruction as a bona fide tag team, because on the next pay-per-view the plan, as explained earlier, is for Kane and The Undertaker to wrestle DDP and Kanyon for all the tag team titles. Ahead of their match with the Brothers of Destruction, the Dudleys are in a backstage segment, proclaiming their intention to inflict damage on The Undertaker's wife by driving Sarah through a table.
You can bet your ass that she's going through a table. Where, oh where, will his little Sarah be safe? Testify.
Then Dudleys make their way into the ring carrying a table, and the Brothers of Destruction, accompanied by Sarah, follow. And this will be a tag team tables match because of reasons. The violence begins and the Brothers of Destruction take the fight to the Dudleys. The common theme in this match is the Dudleys going after The Undertaker's wife and The Undertaker going to the rescue of his damsel in distress. And to no one's surprise, DDP, the bane of Undertaker's existence during this time, would show up to interfere, and DDP shows up to low blow the dead man. Retribution from a couple of weeks earlier when Sarah did the same to DDP. Then DDP would manage to grab a hold of The Undertaker's wife, and Bubba props a table in the middle of the ring, then sits in the corner turnbuckle. Then DDP lifts up Sarah and props The Undertaker's wife on Bubba's shoulders. Sarah resiliently struggles and manages to delay Bubba's offensive moves for enough time that The Undertaker and Kane manage to recover and save Sarah from the horrendous trip to the local medical facility yet again. Undertaker grabs a hold of Bubba's neck and sends him flying through a table, and as usual, DDP runs away. Winners of this table match, the Brothers of Destruction. DDP will return to his full-blown creepy stalker ways on the following episode of Smackdown. In a random locker room backstage, DDP sitting in the dark obsessing about The Undertaker's wife.
When this all first started, Sarah, I just wanted to be famous.
And this is the start of the hilarious backstage shrine that DDP travels with, something that over the coming weeks will evolve and become even more ridiculous, but more on that later.
5 minutes later.
Kanyon is further positioned towards the path of the Brothers of Destruction, because Kanyon is going to have a match with Kane for his United States Championship, but first he's going to cut a promo. Kanyon says his famous catchphrase, and Kane answers Kanyon's question. And to no one's surprise, this match would end by disqualification at the hands of dirty referee NWO Nick Patrick. And just like the week prior, Kane chokeslams Nick Patrick and then leaves the ring in the coolest way possible. Same different week. An hour later, the last piece of this rivalry, The Undertaker, is with his wife Sarah discussing with Commissioner Regal the scheduled Undertaker non-title main event match with Booker T. Angry Undertaker is mad because the match is not for the title, and The Undertaker proclaims that he doesn't need the ego boost from beating Booker. Taker wants the title. Regal tells The Undertaker that the only way that the match becomes for the title is if Booker T agrees to that stipulation. Then The Undertaker leaves.
A few minutes later.
And Booker T is now backstage with Shane. Apparently Booker agreed to a title match because he has something to prove to The Rock, and this is part of their SummerSlam build for the main event match that both The Rock and Booker T would have later in August, but that's a story for another day. 5 minutes later, Undertaker, flanked by his lovely wife Sarah, enters the ring, and Booker T with the Alliance leader Shane follows. In this 10-minute match, The Undertaker would take the fight to Booker T, and Shane would constantly involve himself in the match. Shane interferes while Undertaker is applying a submission hold on Booker T. Shane shakes the rope leading to The Undertaker to go balls first into the top rope, and Shane kicks the crap out of The Undertaker while outside of the ring. Eventually, this match would need to end, and as usual, WWE booked themselves into a corner, and neither The Undertaker or Booker T can afford to lose this match fair and square, especially because both wrestlers are scheduled for a notable match at the following pay-per-view. So a convoluted finish with a dozen interferences and 2 referees is what we get. As Booker T is selling in the corner waiting for The Undertaker's offensive move, Shane distracts the referee Tim White, and as The Undertaker charges towards Booker T, Booker grabs the referee towards himself, causing The Undertaker to come crashing into both the referee Tim White and Booker T. The referee is down, Undertaker signals for the chokeslam, and Shane the Coward grabs the arms of The Undertaker's wife Sarah. Sarah manages to release herself from cowardly Shane, and The Undertaker flattens Shane. Then Sarah and The Undertaker take turns beating the crap out of Shane until Booker T shows up with a steel chair. Booker scares Sarah away, throws The Undertaker back in the ring, and The Rock comes to the aid of The Undertaker, and The Rock would rock bottom Booker T. Shane then takes The Rock out with a chair and drives Rock to the outside, while The Undertaker in the ring is pinning Booker T for the WCW title win. Tim White slowly counting to 3, but Shane manages to stop the referee's count. Undertaker is now in pursuit of Shane, Shane gets grabbed by the throat, Booker T then strikes The Undertaker with the title, and now The Rock goes to work on Shane. Yet another referee shows up.
I'm talking about little nature boy Charles Robinson. You got it?
Then the Alliance faithful appears to beat up The Undertaker and The Rock and The Undertaker would team up to counter the Alliance advances and stand their ground. On the next episode of Monday Night Raw, DDP would interfere in Kane's match with Rob Van Dam. In a typical short match designed to further develop storylines, RVD and Kane would be fighting for possession of a chair. Both men would drop the chair, move to the corner, and DDP shows up to grab the chair clearly in sight of Kane, who ignores DDP, keeping the kayfabe strong. DDP then swings the chair hard at Kane's back, but Kane says, that. Then Kane turns around and gets hit in the head with the chair, and this time Kane actually sells it. DDP props the chair on Kane's chest, and RVD flies through the air with a 5-star frog splash, landing perfectly on Kane. A win by pinfall. Yay! RVD wins this match, and Kane gets up and chases DDP through the audience, but DDP is too fast for Kane and manages to escape. 30 minutes later, DDP is backstage in his shrine to The Undertaker's wife. Thousands of pictures and some TVs adorn this ridiculous shrine. And I have so many questions. Does DDP travel with candles, photographs and small screen TVs, or does he source them locally from Craigslist? How many extension cords does it take to assemble this shrine? Does he arrive early in the day to assemble all this crap? If so, does he use double-sided tape? No one calls him out for using an entire room for this. The only reason any of this happens is logic. DDP worships his shrine and says he wants his Sarah.
I need my Sarah.
Moments later, The Undertaker arrives in his grey custom bike with flames on the side, with his wife Sarah on the back seat. Kane tells The Undertaker that he needs to thank him for not beating up DDP and waiting for The Undertaker to arrive. Kane tells Undertaker of the existence of this shrine, and Undertaker asks Kane where this shrine is. And then The Undertaker sends Kane on a side quest to leave Sarah with the APA for safekeeping. And that's cool because JBL will probably not take advantage of Sarah.
Hey, I tell you what, Mr. Barry, you have all the beer you want. You ain't gotta worry about us taking advantage of you or anything like that. Barry, you have all the beer you want. You ain't gotta worry about us taking advantage of you or anything like that.
Both Kane and The Undertaker are supposed to meet up back at this shrine, and this is also a huge wrestling trope alert moment, typical of horror movies.
Now let's split up. Wait a minute, hold up!
A few moments later.
Undertaker arrives at DDP's shrine and is stunned at what DDP was able to achieve in this locker room. Then Taker grabs his wedding photo and proceeds to attempt to dismantle this horrible shrine. And I say attempt because inanimate objects are The Undertaker's Achilles heel. Like that time, weeks back, that The Undertaker almost did the job for a wooden pallet. Then in the distance, a shadowy figure looms and DDP's voice is heard, but DDP, it is not. It's Kanyon in the worst wig ever, who walks right up to The Undertaker and The Undertaker punches him silly. Then, wrestling trope alert moment, DDP strikes The Undertaker from behind with the kayfabe pipe, and in the nick of time, Kane shows up to save The Undertaker's ass, leading to DDP and Kanyon managing to escape. On the next Smackdown broadcast, in typical WWE fashion, the decision is made to switch the tag team titles with no build, story or anything. On this episode of Smackdown, both the WCW and WWE tag team titles would change hands in a sudden manner, further devaluing the mid-card titles. The APA, composed of Bradshaw, the future wrestling god JBL, and Ron Simmons, are wrestling the team of DDP and Kanyon for the WWE Tag Team Championship. And the WCW Tag Team Champions, Sean O'Haire and Chuck Palumbo, are wrestling the Brothers of Destruction. On the WWE Tag Team title match front, the APA makes their entrance, Kanyon, who is the United States Champion, comes out next, followed by the future CEO of DDP Yoga, who decided to change his ring gear from tight pants to some loose ones. This match will start with DDP getting his ass handed to him by Ron Simmons, then DDP tags in Kanyon, who gets a sweet follow-away slam from Bradshaw, and because this is airing on free TV, interference is mandatory. A wild test appears to kick Simmons' head off, and in the ring, with a sweet clothesline from hell, JBL takes Kanyon's head out. And as Bradshaw covers Kanyon, the referee is absent. In comes Test to hit Bradshaw in the head with the title, Kanyon then covers Bradshaw, and DDP and Kanyon win by pinfall and become the new WWE Tag Team Champions. 5 minutes later, in a backstage segment, DDP and Kanyon are thanking Test for his assistance in helping them win the WWE Tag Team Championships. And this is where the cage match for SummerSlam would be announced by Regal. On the other side of this rivalry, the team of Kane and The Undertaker would mirror Kanyon and DDP's actions and win the opposite brand's titles. Ahead of that match, Palumbo and O'Haire would be on a backstage segment with Stone Cold Steve Austin, who builds up the two men, and with this newfound encouragement, Palumbo and O'Haire would then march to the office of WWE Commissioner William Regal to demand a match with whoever is available. And 30 minutes later, the WCW Tag Team Champions Palumbo and O'Haire would come down to the ring looking as bland as a banana. Then, surprise surprise, Palumbo and O'Haire pull the shortest straw and now have to contend with the Brothers of Destruction.
What? Oh no!
This is also a wrestling trope alert moment. Wrestler in the ring challenging someone in the locker room, only for the worst ever option to appear.
There isn't anyone in the back of that locker room that I can't beat!
I'm flying.
That takes the... Oh my! Oh my!
Fortunately for us and the story, this match would end with a pinfall win and no interference. A breath of fresh air in a sea of mediocrity. In the closing moments of the match, after a sidewalk slam on O'Haire, Kane would grab Palumbo and O'Haire for a chokeslam, which Palumbo and O'Haire would reverse, The Undertaker would then even the odds, and the match would end with stereo chokeslams. Pinfall for the win, and new WCW Tag Team Champions, the Brothers of Destruction. On the following Raw broadcast, Stone Cold and the Alliance opened the show in a segment that I shall now call the Burial of Taz. After Stone Cold congratulates the new WWE Tag Team Champions, DDP and Kanyon, along with Taz to defected to the Alliance because of reasons, Taz would be targeted because of his lack of intestinal fortitude, and not coming to the aid of Shane McMahon as Shane was being driven through a table by The Rock. Taz would attempt to fight back, but eventually the rest of the Alliance would gang up on Taz and beat down the human suplex machine. 15 minutes later, DDP and Kanyon are backstage trying to hype O'Haire and Palumbo for their cage match later tonight with the Brothers of Destruction. O'Haire and Palumbo make their entrance, the Brothers of Destruction follow, accompanied by Sarah. Undertaker gets in the ring, and immediately the heel strike. Blocking the entry is The Undertaker, and Kane attempts to climb the cage, but Kane gets kicked out of the cage by O'Haire. Then O'Haire gets a door to the face, courtesy of Kane. Now inside the cage is Kane, and Kane chokeslams O'Haire. All this while The Undertaker has been pummeling Palumbo. The Brothers of Destruction are in control of this match. The former WCW stars are being treated as jobbers because they kind of are. Out from the gorilla position appear DDP and Kanyon, and both men remain steadfast on the top of the ramp as the Brothers of Destruction continue to work on WCW's Blenders tag team. As O'Haire attempts to climb the cage, Kane follows. O'Haire falls down the cage outside of camera view, and Palumbo is bleeding from the forehead, and later in the match, as DDP and Kanyon approach the ring, Palumbo would get a last ride. DDP suddenly remembers that his gimmick is to chase Sarah, and Sarah is all alone outside of the ring, and the Brothers of Destruction are trapped inside.
What? Oh no!
Sarah tries her best to run away and starts to climb the cage. Spider-Woman Sarah gets to the top of the cage in under 3 seconds. Then DDP and Kanyon give chase, but The Undertaker uses Palumbo as a battering ram to knock DDP and Kanyon out of the cage. Kane pins O'Haire, Undertaker climbs the cage and joins his lovely bride. In the last episode before the confrontation between the Brothers of Destruction and DDP and Kanyon, the Dastardly Heels are wrestling the team of Christian and Edge, who at this point are heading to their eventual demise. Kanyon comes out, bang, and DDP is here, and another short match typical of this era would ensue. Fun fact, DDP would actually have a rivalry months later with Christian ahead of their Wrestlemania 18 match, but that's a story for another day. Match evolves, and the level of ring work that 45 years old DDP still performs at is great. Granted, he started late, but Mother Nature is a bitch, and even though DDP is getting up there in age, his ring performance doesn't really show it. And later in the match, Edge rolls Kanyon as the NWO referee Nick Patrick ignores. And because this is free TV, you already know that this will end with interference. And after Christian takes out DDP and goes for some shares, Lance Storm, who is wrestling Edge at SummerSlam, appears to superkick Edge, leading to Christian chasing Storm and Kanyon almost pinning Edge, who kicks out at 2.5. And eventually, moments later, DDP Diamond Cutters Edge and Kanyon pins Edge to win this match. 5 minutes later, Kane, Undertaker and Sarah get interviewed by Coach. Undertaker gets asked about his feelings, and The Undertaker tells Coach that he's going to kick DDP's ass this Sunday.
Diamond Dallas. Oh my God, is Undertaker gonna kick my ass on Sunday Page?
Then The Undertaker talks about Kanyon, says that he shows some promise.
Why a young man with so much promise would want to get locked in a cage with this?
Then The Undertaker delivers the worst pun ever.
Because really, who badder than Kane? Go yourself.
And we are finally here, the final confrontation in the form of a tag team match instead of an awesome singles match between The Undertaker and DDP. Ahead of that match, the Brothers of Destruction are shown walking backstage, accompanied by Sarah, and the ominous cage music plays while a recap of previous events is shown to catch up the audience on the events leading to this moment. The dual champion Kanyon makes his entrance, DDP does his kayfabe gimmick shtick, and then bangs, and the dual theme combo of Kane and The Undertaker would play next. Everyone shakes the cage while entering, and after the 4 men are inside, The Undertaker closes the door, and Sarah, who apparently is a WWE official now, locks the cage door and then keeps the key on her bra. Classy. The bell rings and immediately the heels attempt to flee. DDP is taken down, then hits the side of the cage, and Kanyon is sent to his doom all the way from up the cage. The brawl evolves and the good guys are in control. Big boot to DDP and Kane is choking Kanyon with his foot. DDP attempts to gain the advantage on The Undertaker, but The Undertaker subverts DDP. DDP kicks The Undertaker and a low blow to The Undertaker followed by some cage wall scrapping. Then a clothesline for a near fall and Kanyon manages to leave Kane out of action for a while. Now they switch opponents and Kanyon is now at the mercy of The Undertaker and DDP is getting his ass kicked by Kane. Down are Kanyon and DDP, and another switch and The Undertaker is now working on DDP, and Kane is now on Kanyon. Kanyon gets thrown over the top rope, Undertaker grabs DDP by the head and feeds him to the cage once again. Kanyon attempts to jump off the top rope but gets caught and eats a choke slam. DDP gets thrown as a lawn dart to the cage. Kane then drives Kanyon to the cage's corner and The Undertaker gets some momentum courtesy of his brother Kane and rams DDP on the cage. Then off the ropes comes Taker with an intense boot to DDP. Undertaker then tries again to come off the ropes to inflict damage on DDP, but Kanyon manages to take out The Undertaker. As Kanyon attempts to escape in the corner, Kane attempts a powerbomb on Kanyon. Kanyon manages to drop Kane and DDP gives a DDT to The Undertaker. Kane and The Undertaker are down as the heels attempt to climb the cage. Kane and Taker rise from the dead and give chase to their foes. The Undertaker kicks DDP out of the corner and DDP falls to his doom, square on his family jewels. Undertaker signals Kane to let Kanyon go, as The Undertaker reaches inside the pockets of the cage structures to remove some conveniently placed chains. Kanyon manages to leave the cage, leaving DDP all alone in the middle of the ring, flanked by Kane and The Undertaker. The Brothers of Destruction drop DDP, Kane hits DDP in the corner, Undertaker then throws DDP to the opposite corner, sidewalk slam by The Undertaker on DDP, near fall, and The Undertaker is not done yet with DDP and unbreaks the referee's count himself. Undertaker now pummels DDP in the corner and The Undertaker would now use the chains he had procured earlier to choke DDP into the cage wall, then chokeslam on DDP as DDP begs for his life. The babyface Undertaker now comes to reason and tells DDP to get out of the cage and not look at his wife ever again, or risk facing the ire of the American Badass.
Get your ass out of here, I'll let you live. You ever look at her again, I'll kill you.
Cowardly heel DDP starts to climb the cage and it was all a ruse. Undertaker grabs DDP by the throat and DDP gets chokeslam, and The Undertaker signals for the last ride while pointing to his wife Sarah. Last ride on DDP and The Undertaker pins DDP to win this match and gain revenge on his wife's foe. And the icing on the cake, the Brothers of Destruction become dual tag team champions. Thank you for watching this trip down memory lane regarding The Undertaker and DDP, right? What? There's more? What do you mean there's more? Caralho! DDP apparently got injured during his cage match the previous night, so in order to button up the story, a match is set up between Sarah and her former foe, DDP, because logic. Ahead of their crappy match, Sarah would be shown shadowboxing and DDP gets interviewed by Michael Cole. DDP says he wasn't successful and that he's hurting after being in the cage the previous night.
I am hurting like hell off that cage.
DDP wants to get his hands on Sarah in front of her husband Undertaker, and more footage of Sarah backstage warming up for a match would be shown as The Undertaker hypes his wife. 5 minutes later, DDP comes out, sailing and stumbling down the arena ramp. Undertaker would make his entrance in his black custom bike with his wife seated behind him. Sarah gets in the ring and The Undertaker stands outside watching. DDP offers Sarah the first shot, and Sarah takes it. DDP then gets another shot from Sarah, then DDP pushes Sarah, leading to The Undertaker attempting to interfere. Then Sarah attempts to punch DDP with the moves that she learned from the Rocky movies. DDP pushes Sarah to the corner and The Undertaker gets an elbow to the face, courtesy of DDP. DDP then gets grabbed by The Undertaker and dragged out of the ring. Undertaker then punches DDP outside, chokeslam on the outside, and now the bell rings to start this match. Sarah pins DDP and wins this match, and off goes DDP to take care of his injury for the next few months. And this is how the rivalry between DDP and The Undertaker ended. This video is part 3 of a 3-part series of videos comprising the entire Undertaker and Diamond Dallas Page rivalry during the summer of 2001. Links to the other videos are in the description. Thank you for watching this long trip down memory lane regarding The Undertaker and Diamond Page rivalry. Leave your comments, suggestions, ideas or constructive criticism in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to press that like button and also subscribe for more future content just like this. Or better, this has been fun. Thank you for watching.